that you got all the facts and the ideas of our speakers about our topic today around the gender diversity, conclusion, belongings, women who make difference. Anything that you can contribute to the seminar, please feel free to raise your hand and our organizer will give the microphone for you. But first of all, please give me the advantage to ask the first question. You talk a lot about the women moving up to the leadership, and you encourage women a lot to break all the barriers. But then before we can break the barriers, we should know what the barriers are. So from your own experience, can you just tell us about the biggest barrier of women on the way they move to the leader role? I think, Scott, I know you're not woman, of course, but your wife, as you mentioned, she's also a manager, a leader, and you work with a lot of leaders and women leaders as well. So from your perspective, what's the biggest barrier?
I should have said ladies first, but yeah, I have. Yeah. So from my personal experience and having a wife that's a senior leader within a global organization, personally for us, I think the biggest challenge is around the family and having. I mean, we as I shared earlier, we've got a son, and there becomes a time within, and this was the experience of my wife, is that I've been fully supportive of her career, and I've put my career on the back burner to be able to support hers on certain occasions. Like when we moved to Hong Kong, I gave up my job to move to Hong Kong to support her career. But when it came to the point of us having a family, for 2 years, that was her priority. And actually, she wanted that to be her focus and took actually 2 years out of work to be able to focus on starting a family. Now, the biggest challenge for that is that it sets you back slightly because, you know, she wasn't able to take the next step in her career, and it's like a 2-year gap in her career. Having said that, I think that having a family gives you a whole different perspective on life. And is enable you to develop more compassion, and for me it sort of makes you a better professional if you do have a family. But I think that's one of the biggest barriers, is that sort of 2-year gap in the career and on our personal experience.
Yeah. So from Ms. Tan's presentation, I think that your wife picked the right husband.
Well, from my own experience, I think that I am quite lucky that I've been working with a very supportive, mentor. I had a great network support. But, I want to share a story that last October, I actually joined the International Women Forum. It's an international, that's probably the biggest, women association in the world. It's happened every year in the different country. The last time I joined is actually in Texas, US. And I got honor to actually listen to Hillary Clinton as a speaker. She shared her personal story, and suddenly I feel so related. I never asked myself that, in my career, whether or not I actually face a big challenge when I'm working with men. But when Hillary shared that story, immediately it clicked with me. Her story was, she said that, you all know Hillary Clinton, and then you all know how hard she worked to become, herself today. Even in a very freedom world like the US, she's facing a huge problem of the, the glass ceiling. And one of the advice that she gave to the entire forum, she said that being a woman, you need a man allies, but you also need to support, women yourself. The support comes from a very small gesture, but it's really worthy. She said that how many times does she actually was in the meeting with men? She said exactly the same thing of somebody, same level, college of her, saying, but that opinion, that comment is never valued. It's easily pass on until, you know, one man actually say it himself. So, but she learned one thing, that, you know, if somebody in the room just pick it up and say, it's a great idea. Either it come in from the woman or the man, it's a man ally, or it's a woman support each other. And then, you know, that comment or that opinion won't be passed on easily. So when you go into the meeting, regardless the split between men or women, some women say something that you feel like that there's certain material in there that is potential and is good enough, show your support. Raise your voice and say, I think that you have something in there. Let's move further and let's discuss about that. Don't let men in the room because of the majority. They said that, you know, I'm not very sure it's a good idea, something in there, but, you know, let's pass on. You know what I mean? It comes from a very, very small gesture. Women, us, support to each other by raise our voice and say, and then nurture it, and then live it on, and then make it live on. And men, as a leadership, when women say something, hear it better, you know, and actually listen more carefully. And then if you can ask again, you can say, why don't you just say it again if you don't understand it fully, or if you can pick up something that is just maybe very minorly good from that what women say, but don't pass on. That we call man ally. And I feel like, you know, because even that how good your college are, that sort of a unconscious behaviors happen a lot in the workplace. So be conscious, supportive in the daily conversation, in the daily meeting, in the very small gesture that you do in the workplace, and then it makes the whole lot different. I might face another bigger challenge, but I don't remember at this moment. But, you know, that's something that is actually can help a lot. And, but again, I can share that, you know, because we did a lot of research, you know, one of the biggest in Vietnam, one of the biggest problem that we are facing is women, they so good, but they always, you know, not very sure about themselves. When they talk about themselves, they just try to, you know, to be modest. Mm. And I really don't understand why you have to be like that. You don't need to exaggerate what you're good at. You need to be truthful. And somebody say that we don't believe in ourselves. I don't take that as an answer. I do believe that women in Vietnam, you have a strong belief in yourself. But when you say something about yourself, you have the tendency to actually degrade yourself.
Yeah, so the biggest barrier from within yourself, not from,
so
not from others.
I think that that's a few issues that I can share with you at the moment from the, you know, the woman point of view.
Yeah, so just practice supporting women by give her a big applause, yeah. we should practice that, right? We raise our voice to support others. So Ms. Mai, how about your idea?
All right. Actually, I think that I also almost the same like Jitan. That right now I cannot recall the true barriers that happened to me, but probably I can share with you the lesson learned from my personal experience in the past that I mentioned earlier in the presentation. I think that the barriers, if we can say, if we can call that the barrier, is again actually from within ourselves, right? We are afraid of getting the support. You know, the Vietnamese women, and again, you know, it's more like it happened to me before, right? When I was ambitious and tried and learned to get ready for the higher positions, but then I was afraid that I might bother my families, you know, disturb my husband's work by asking him for help, you know, and then I was afraid that I might create more works for my mother-in-law because I stayed with my parents-in-law at that time. So you know, if I ask her to support me to look after my small kids at that time, I felt guilty. And that is, you know, when I talk to a lot of Vietnamese ladies, they are also sharing the same feelings. You know, they just feel that, okay, if they do not do it themselves, they do not teach the kids, they do not take care of the kids, they do not send the kids to schools, they are guilty. So, and I had the same feeling before. And that ended up that I got burst, right? The lesson learned is that actually we can ask for support from the people around you, the people who love you. And if you don't, one thing that I found for myself as well, in conversation with my husband, is that if I do not tell him how he can support me, that he would not know. Men are not good at guessing females' ideas, you know, and thoughts. And from us, we expect them to understand without us telling them. So that is one thing that I learned from my family, and then I brought that back to work as well. You will never know that, you know, your boss, we need to build a support system like Chitan already mentioned, right? We need to have the support from our CEO. We need to have the support from from our colleagues, from the subordinates as well. But if we do not let them know how best they can support us, they will never know. Okay, and that will never happen. So building the support system is the effort from us, and we have to be proactively do that in order for us to be happy, in order for us to have enough strength and capabilities to actually execute the bigger task and have the strength to go longer way. So to me, you know, proactively going out to get support, you know, and at the same time, you know, like Chitan said, support other women. That would be the key things for us women to overcome the glass ceiling that we create for ourselves.
Yeah. Thank you, Chị Mai. Yeah, we're good in practicing.
So I'd just like to add to that. As I was hearing you talk about that, Minh, it really a personal story came up within my team, and that asking and that sort of allowing, getting the ally, but tell them challenges you're facing. And one of the top salespeople within our organisation that reports to me, she was having her second child, and actually I offered her a role within my team. And she said to me straight after, she's like, I've got to tell you something, I'm pregnant and with the second child. And I was like, that's amazing. And she was shocked at my reaction about being so pleased for her. She's like, but that means I'm going to be going on maternity. I'm like, we'll figure it out. That's fine. We're like, you know, we'll work around it. I gave her based on merit of being the best person for the role. When she went off on maternity leave and then coming back to work, she was having complications, and without getting into too much detail, but around breastfeeding, and was having real trouble with the child taking the bottle. And I gave her, and by her telling me that these challenges she was facing, you know, outside of HR policy, just as someone that worked with her, gave her complete flexibility to be able to work from home, to be able to work around those challenges. As long as I had that trust, and we'd built that trust over working with each other for quite a few years, that gave her complete autonomy, and that I knew that she would get the job done within the parameters, and if she had to work from home. And giving her that flexibility to be able to work from home, to be able to manage her work around her family, created this complete loyalty to working with me, and to this, like, she worked so unbelievably hard to be able to sort of reward, and as a reward of the trust and the autonomy that I've given to her. And for me, as like a leader, it's been like a really eye-opening experience. But also, I think her being upfront with me and talking about her challenges and situations enabled me to be able to support her through it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Once again, your wife picked the right husband. Thank you. And yeah, we believe that those barriers cannot stop women from doing the leadership role in nowadays. So any questions from the audience today? You can discuss, even you can challenge our speakers today.
I've actually got a question for all of you. How many of you in your organizations actually have a strategy around diversity and inclusion? It was 13%, I think, was on the survey. But a show of hands, how many of your organizations have actually started on this journey? So there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so there's probably around sort of 10% or so that have. Interesting. Hopefully, in a year's time, there'll be a lot more hands showing.
Right. Maybe next seminar we will have like more hands showing.
Don't forget, Scott. The clients that we are inviting here today, they have been working with Navigos Search for a long time, and then they are big corporations. And like Tan mentioned earlier, right, the big corporation, they are quite serious about, all the strategies that actually help building up the good working environment and that contribute to the good business results as well. Yeah, so I'm so glad that so many hands raises here when Scott asked about your company strategy about gender diversity. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I do hope that more and more hands raised when we ask that you have any questions. So yes, please, for the gentleman here.
Thank you very much for your speech today. It's very interesting. And according to the presentation from chị Mai, there are 46% of the women leadership in professional service. So could you please explain more about why there are more women in that industry, and what makes them more successful in professional service, not other industry? That's first question. And the secondly, during my working time, I saw a lot of women in the leadership, top management, but many of them are not have the work-life balance. It means they have not the happy family. I mean, sometimes divorce. So could you give some advice for us to overcome and have a work-life balance? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I think that the other speakers can add on to my answer later. First question is about the statistics, right? So from the survey, it showed that 40% of our respondents think that professional service is the industry that is most suitable for female. Yeah. And I think that it would be back to the, again, the perception of women's strengths, the key traits that actually Chị Thanh also mentioned in her presentation. You know, women in the professional services, it is the industry that we have to do a lot of interaction with people. Service mindset, people skilled, patience, persistence, and then the careness are those qualities that help the people in professional service to become more successful. So again, that is the general perception. We would not say that, okay, that is the industry just for women, because we have seen that there are a lot of men in professional service, in hospitality, for example. I don't recall knowing any female general manager for any hotel here in Vietnam. No. Well, at least from what I know, I haven't come across any ladies in the general manager positions for the hotels here in Vietnam, for example, and that is in professional services as well. So we think that, you know, that is the statistics just show us that there are certain kind of general perception in the society that there are certain job, certain industry, certain function, function that are meant for men or for women. Yeah, and we would need to think more on providing the opportunities for the other genders in that industries to also grow up and prove themselves as well. Okay, So probably that would be the first question that I would like to clarify, right? On your second question, that is also an interesting phenomenon in Vietnam. To be honest, in my opinions, I don't think that the term work-life balance would be strictly just related to whether or not that woman has a family, or has a husband, right? Because work-life balance to me is more on the how you live your life, how you enjoy your life, and how you enjoy your life and work at the same time. So now it's not talking just on my own experience, because of course for me I'm quite lucky because I got the right man. So I have my husband, and then my kids are quite grown up already. Actually, I am about to become grandma soon. Well, yeah, because my son is 28 years old. So if he follows my experience, then he might get married soon, right? So to me, work-life balance, I would want to look at the broader term. You devote to your work, but you need to love your work. There is a saying that if you love your work, then you do not have to work any day, right? Because every day you go out, it could be an enjoyable day. You know, waiting for you in the office are happy faces of your team members, you know, happy smile from your boss, and try to create that to make the working environment a happy place for you to go and spend majority of the time during your day. But then on your private time, choose the way that you live your life the most to the most satisfaction of your own definition. You know, maybe for the people, some ladies that I also know in the top positions, they go up to the top level already and they get divorced. That is their choice, right? Maybe that choice make them happy, because probably the husband didn't support her to work in that level. Maybe the husband wanted her to sacrifice her work and stay at home or spend more time with the family, whereas the work actually gives her the energy and the joy to live. So again, it's work-life balance, or how to live happily, is all about making the choices that fit your definition of happiness, and at the same time, give all of your efforts, you know, do whatever you can to make sure that every piece of the puzzle, you know, every stakeholders that related to your life, they have to feel happy as well. I'm lucky, right, to have a good man, but to be honest, I think that I made that luck because I have to invest in that relationship. And I invest in that relationship happily, because I know that if I make him happy, he would support me more in life and at work. And at the same time, you know, when I'm investing in that relationship, it costs me time, it costs me effort, but it's all about balancing the time that you can invest to different relationship in your daily life. One day, you have to spend more time with your colleagues. The other days, you have to spend more time with your friends. The other days, you have to spend more time with your family, your husband, your kids, right? So that makes me so proud of being a woman, because women are so good at balancing the time and then make the priorities for each day of her life. And to me, that would be the secret. Make your choice and prioritize your time for different targets or different stakeholders in your life. And I believe that you will have that kind of work-life balance. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your secret. Chị Thanh, would you contribute to this question?
Well, I mean, you your answer is very comprehensive. I think that, come back to your question about, why on the professional service, you see the percentage of women a lot higher. From what I know, women and men have a different skill set. So in a certain area, you're going to see a lot more women than men, naturally. I mean, you just cannot request the equal split in all the industry between men and women. What we actually discussing here, because, in the perception, because of that skill set, and because of the cultural influencer, people believe that's the dangerous zone. The belief is the dangerous zone. It's not the skill set. Because when you stereotype, you believe that you are woman, so you should teach. You woman, you should do service. You woman, you should not work for tech. That's the dangerous zone. It's not about the number that you see in the different industry, because I think that at the end of the day, nobody's gonna change it, because, women cut differently from men. And women have a different skill set than men. That's the reason why a certain industry just require more women than men. But the topic that we're discussing today is the mindset, the perception that stop women who have that skill come into the field that she's supposed to be succeeding in that field. That's the topic that we're talking today. Come back into the work-life balance. This is a very, very tricky area. I mean, a lot of people come to me and say, what's the work-life balance? It might be different from the different people thinking about the work-life balance. To me, work-life balance is a lot of things, but it can be only one thing. It means that you could be happy at work and you could be happy at your life. And regardless the weightage of how much you work and how much you actually do in your leisure time, it doesn't matter. And I don't believe any human being that can be always happy all the time. So you're gonna have uptime and you're gonna have downtime. But work-life balance is when you have downtime, you always have somebody there to be going through the hard time with you. Either that person from work, either that person from home, either that person actually your long friends, but somebody who actually walk in the hard time together with you. And then don't let you be alone, and don't let you be so depressed that you make a wrong choice in your life. To me, then that's enough as a work-life balance. You don't aim to be very happy at work and very happy at life, and then you call it work-life balance, because it never exists.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I really echo that, and for me, work-life balance is about, put very simply, is to get up in the morning and be excited to go to the work, and to finish the day's work and be excited to go home and see your family and my son. Like, that's the definition of balance and happiness for me. And then just around the and with that, we as at LinkedIn, we talk a lot about leading with compassion, and we train all of our leaders around how to be compassionate. And like, compassion, put quite simply, is if you used to see someone in trouble, say someone had been in an accident or rolled over by a rock, and empathy is around feeling their pain. And compassion is around feeling the pain, but then wanting to do something about it. And so we demonstrate compassion at work, wanting to try and like empathize with our employees, but then also trying to do something about it, take action. And it's all very well doing that at work, but we've got to do that at home as well. So not just showing compassion at work, but showing compassion at home with your family, with your wife, with your kids as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, sometimes we misunderstand between gender and characteristic. We related some characteristic to the gender, like women should have this, that characteristic, and so on. Men, that's sometimes women bias themselves. Yeah, regarded from the answer of the speakers here, I can tell that. So thank you so much again, and for the questions. And any other questions? Yes, there's some more. Let's leave the microphone. Yeah, Thư ạ. Yeah. Okay. Oh yes, maybe you should introduce yourself so others
Sure.
can know you. Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me. Hello everyone, my name is Trieu. I'm currently HR Director of AB InBev. So I have the question. I think that, first of all, thank you a lot for all of your sharing. I think I get a lot of useful information today. My question is on, regardless all of the social perception, company support or not in the women leadership, we talk about the capability of the women to be the leadership role. So I just want to ask your own experience in your journey to be at that level now, how you develop your capability as a woman to be a leadership role. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Thu. Capability as a woman.
You gave quite a hard question, actually.
Yeah, very
because,
challenging.
Honestly, this reminded me on the comment that Jitan made before on the one of the traits of the women is the lifelong learning. Yeah, we have the feeling and the perception of the lifelong learning. So to me, I just didn't really make a plan or the strategy on what I need to do in order for me to be in this position. I have to be very honestly say so. Because, at my age, quite long time ago, right? I grew up in the society where and I didn't have the chance to go abroad for study. So around me is all about, man is superior. Man is the best. Man is stronger, more intelligent than women. And even, in my family, my elder brother, he has the full attention of the whole big family, because he is very intelligent, very smart. Well, I'm smart too. I was smart too, but nobody cared. So what I naturally did is that I just try my best. I just tried to learn, to study, to win the scholarship, just to prove to my parents that I'm also as good as my brother. Yeah, starting point to me is that simple. I just want to prove that I'm not worse than my brother. Then after that, when I won the scholarship to go to the Soviet Union, Russia, to study during my university time, then at that time I had the other motivation. I tried my best to prove to all of the students from other nations that the Vietnamese students can do as good as they are, not, if not better. Because, in all of my 3 years in Russia, before I went back to Vietnam, all of the semesters I won the top prize, and I used the prizes to travel on the republics under the former Soviet Union, 16 republics, and I traveled to 13 of them by the scholarship that I won from the competition in the universities, competing with the other students from other countries. And it's just, I didn't mean to plan anything for my career, actually. It's just that naturally I just want to prove that I'm not worse than others. So when I returned to Vietnam and then I started my work, is also again the feeling that proving myself that actually make me work and think beyond, outside of the box, taking a lot of challenges, took 2 more university degrees, and then, I just try to learn every day. I learn from the job, learn from the academic programs, learn from the soft skills courses, whatever available at that time. And I think that it's all contribute back to the results, the quality of my work, and the opportunities just came. Even at Navigos Search, I never ever planned that I would be the managing director, to be honest. But then it's just that, thanks to the support of my team, and we got good results. We proved that whatever strategy that we applied was right, and then the opportunities came to me. So I didn't really plan for it. Very sorry to say so. So probably I couldn't give any specific advice to you. It's just my personal story. I hope that it can give you some hint. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Tan? Yeah, maybe, yeah, I saw the hand here.
Hello everyone. And so I think that I'm also 3% from the FMCG at two. I'm two from Heineken, Vietnam. And so my question is two parts based on Scott's presentation. And I would like to ask more about the employer in program that you have a 6 month for the female. And the second part of my question that are you sharing from level 1 to level 6, and I see in here all the director and also the age of the female in that role and also different from our age, like millennial. And so how you advise to the young leader, women, to build their support system. I think that the support system for the young woman leader and also different from another leader from level 3 to 6. And the last question that are really interesting on the International Women Forum, and so I'm asking that the organizer, do you think that you will create the Vietnamese Women Forum after this seminar or not? Yeah, 3 parts of my question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just to give you a bit of insight into the, further insight into the Empower In program, it was is an initiative that was led by HR. So our head of talent acquisition for Asia, a lady by the name of Amy Schultz, was the leader of the initiative. And then I was sort of part of the faculty for it to be able to give insight and input. And it was a 6-month program where it was managers had to nominate their employees. So it was the initiative was shared with all of the leadership across the organization, where you could nominate your aspiring leaders within your business. So as I said, I nominated 2 people from my team, and it started off with we invited the members, the people that got accepted into Singapore, whereby we had like a 2-day in-depth training session. One of the sessions being around, it's called Own the Room. You can look it up. It's a really interesting like training program. It's an external facilitator that really encourages people on how to communicate effectively in a group situation. And it's often a big challenge. I think you discussed around women being heard in that sort of boardroom situation. And so that was an area that we worked on for development. And then we also had an internal training program called Data Driven University, which DDU is the acronym, where we talk about using data to make informed decisions for the business. So it's run by sort of ex-McKinsey and Bain consultants that work for LinkedIn. And it's all of our managers and senior level leadership go through this training. So it was an introduction to that, of what it would be like to be a leader. So really it's around setting up, helping people understand what it would be like to be a leader within the organization, hearing stories from some of our top female leaders in the business, for them to be able to put their hat in the ring and see what, or actually for one of the people in my team, she was like, I'd love to be a leader, but I'm not yet. Like, I love my job at the moment, but I know what it's going to be like, and a year down the line, that's my plan, but at the moment, I want to become a master in my current role. And then another person in my team who went for it is currently in an interview process for a leadership role in the business. But yeah, I really encourage you to think around some of these initiatives for your own organisation.
Yes, but she had 3 questions. Are you?
Yeah, sorry, I'll just take the first one.
Yeah. Maybe I added on a little bit more. Well, for the millennial that you mentioned, I came across a very interesting research about, and your story is fascinating, but it's remind me a lot of the women that I know, because, that sort of generation, we grow up and constantly prove that we actually as good as our brothers, as good as, you know, our men around us. You know, the society, the culture, and even, you know, the before 75, after the 75, the country, you know, regime had changed a lot the way that women thinking ourselves. And then, you know, you remind me so much of the people that I know around me. They're so good at what they're doing, simply because the biggest driver, the biggest motivation, because they want to prove. And the millennials research, it says something that is so interesting, because the millennial is a bit different from the, you know, the insight that Mai just shared. If you coaching the level 3, level 4 in your organization, very often that you find the different drill. If the woman at the level 6 at the moment, they very determined, they very driven, even the very talent in your corporation from level 3 and level 4, there's a big drill that they have a lot more distraction. They're not that focused and they're not that driven. So when you coaching the people at the millennial to the leadership, you need to pay attention to that, especially the Vietnamese millennial. They actually believe that they have a lot of choice, whereby my story, that you can see from her story that she has no choice, but just like learn and learn and learn so that she can prove. That mentality is dying in the millennial today because of the society, because of the economy, because of a lot of stuff. But that's the reason why when you are designing the women leadership for your millennial, pay attention into the different drill. So you might have a different program. So that's the only sharing that I could have. There's a lot of interesting research about the mindset and the behavior of the Vietnamese millennial today. In order just to bring in your HR policy, read that, and read it carefully, because it's quite different from the level 6 that you're actually having at your corporation at the moment. Come back to the International Women Forum. I don't think that, you know, I'm the person who would say that we're gonna organize something like that for Vietnam, but maybe Mai gonna have something to say. But I would be very happy to be a contributor in that sort of association if it exists in Vietnam.
Thank you. Thank you, chị Thanh. I just want to add on some information on the millennials, the analysis and the survey on millennials, Vietnamese millennials' mindset, behaviors, and preferences. We do have a report on that. We last year, late in Q3 last year, we made a quite thorough survey on that. And I could be happy if you are interested in, I would send to all participants. Maybe some of you already received that last year, but I would just send it one more time after this event. So I will just remind the marketing team to help sending out together with the material of today's event. Okay. In terms of the Women's Association, actually today in Vietnam, we already have a number of women's associations. In Ho Chi Minh City, for example, there is a quite strong association under the Youth Business Association of Ho Chi Minh City. They call it HAWI. So HAWI Club is actually the group of the women in, across all the industries in different level of their career. So if you are interested in, then okay. Actually, I'm also a member of that association. So we would try to find another opportunities to invite Howie to come here and then also join with our audience here in the next event that Navigos Search will organize. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for 2 questions. And is there any question? Now it's like 12 past 10, and maybe we have two more questions. Yeah.
Thank you for the session today. I do learn a lot from you guys. Thank you a lot about that. I have one, maybe need your advice. From a book from Marshall Goldsmith and his friend, it says something about women like the topics we said today, that the women were born with some characteristics and they recognize and they appreciate because of the focus on the detail, because always be a perfect. So because of that, in their mind, they scared of trends. And because of that, they not really willing to take risks like you guys said today. Because of that, in the perception of other person, they say that the woman not brave enough to take the top position in the organization. Because of that, the challenge, the opportunity will not come to them. So we do a lot to change the perception of other person. But how about themselves? About the woman, they still think that they need to be perfect, they need to be focused on the detail, and they're not willing to take risks. And in my real life, I do see my college, see you to be really talented, and we have a program to develop for her. But after that, when she have a baby, she change. Even we try, even the environment still there, the policy is still there, the manager is still there. Of course, we cannot change her husband, but she totally changed. That is her choice. So how can we have them, we support on them on the case like that? Maybe we need your advice. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Probably Chị Thanh can give some additional advice later, right? With her experience. Just my comments is that of course we would never be able to support someone who does not want to be supported, right? Okay, and I think that any of us in a certain stage of our lives, we would have to make different choices. And maybe the priorities for us at that time is different. So if she, at this moment, if she chooses to be focusing more on the family than investing more to grow her potentials that we see, right? Let her be. Continue supporting her. Because at this stage, of course, family is more important to her. Then she invests more. Like in Scott's family's story, his wife also made the choice to kind of step back for 3 years, right? Yeah, and that is her choice. We cannot push, right? The only thing from the company's point of view, I think that as the leaders, as the HR directors, what we can do is that we make sure that we have all the supports ready there. Use it or not, that is our employees' choice, right? And then also for women, I think that it's very important, again, to ensure that we can arrange to have the kind of in-house mentors or coaches, or find the coaches outside, to make it ready to support the, of course, especially the people in our talent pools, the people that we really want to invest and grow up. Just get all of the information of the support that they may need ready there for them. And again, use it or leave it. It would be their choice. And all we need to do is to respect their choice. Yeah, that is my opinions. How about you, Cost?
I think that's, I really echo that as well. And I think you can't force someone, if they make a decision to prioritize family, you can't force them to change that decision. All I would say is that just because they've taken that choice then, it doesn't mean that they need to be put on the bench completely. Just give time and allow them to work through that process. If they're showing all of the skills and all of the knowledge and experience to be able to do that senior leadership role, then that's not going to go away from having a family. The passion might diminish for a short term, but it will more often than not come back. And that was the experience of my wife. She decided to take 2 years out, and now she's come into an even more senior position than she was prior to taking time out. So just be patient and allow them to work through the process, and I'm sure that their aspirations will come back and will develop.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your questions. Maybe one last question. Yes, please. I know that lady come from Hong Kong. I just sit next to her. Thank you so much for coming, and please ask question.
Okay, so my name is Leola. I come from Hong Kong. Now I'm being the head of HR in Vietnam. My company is On Semiconductor. We are a high-tech company. I have a question to ask is, I learned a lot of sharing from this seminar talking about how HR can help with the development of women leaders. For example, what Scott said is, can we have flexible working hours for the woman lady to study, to upgrade themselves? So apart from the flexibility of the working hours, what Scott will think about the role of HR, or what are the policies that HR can try to formulate that will help with the woman leadership within the organization? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And whilst HR is really important to help come up with the ideas, really, as we mentioned before, I think in all of our presentations, this needs to come from the CEO. It needs to come from the C-suite of the organization in terms of wanting to change policy. We have at LinkedIn, we have some really, really interesting and forward-thinking initiatives for females specifically, like around maternity leave, and we've increased our maternity leave policy to 6 months. I think in Hong Kong it's 8 or 10 weeks, which is such a short amount of time. And so we've, as an organisation, have extended that to a 6-month period. We also, very innovative in the US, we also offer discounted IVF treatments. So if women want to hedge for the future and not have to feel pressured to be able to start a family too early, and you're just creating that flexible working. A lot of the time, though, I shared my story about someone within my team, and that was me as a leader using my own judgment. Rather than specifically getting HR's agreement that I could allow my team to work from home, I took it upon myself. I'm hoping my HR isn't listening to me right now, but I was able to make that judgment because I've worked with that employee for enough time. So I suppose giving leaders a certain amount of flexibility to be able to work within the sort of HR parameters that you have to have in place as an organization, but giving that flexibility for leaders to be able to be compassionate and to be able to use their own judgment is really important.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Similar to LinkedIn, but we also have more if you can find it useful. At Admin, apart from the flexibility hours and increase the maternity leave time, we also introduce several programs. We call it Linen Circle. I guess you're already very familiar with the Linen Circle, but we introduced that because we actually work together with the Facebook, and we introduce it into the women community. We group a very small group. We call it Linen Circle, and you guys can choose your Linen Circle. And then in that Linen Circle, you actually can share your trouble either at work or at home, and then we can support each other in that Linen Circle. But that Linen Circle actually promoted, supported, and nurtured by Admin Network. So we encourage that culture, so women can have the small network support so that they can feel it. They can actually get actual practical advice. And then, if that group need the support from the corporation itself, they can come and see the CEO. So that's one thing on the Linen Circle. The second thing, we call it the mentorship program. You actually can register for your own mentor. And then, if somebody become mentee and mentor, you need to really commit your time into the mentorship program, because that person needs professional advice from you. You need to have time to sit down and give it. So basically, those are very practical activities that you put into your workplace so that your women or your employees feel like that they actually have tools to practice their women diversity, equality, and then they've been coached into their leadership role. There's also another activities that is actually quite famous in the abdomen network. We call it Man Allies. Man Ally is not a concept coming from abdomen, but we make that concept become very famous in abdomen simply because we came from the place that the majority of the CEO are white male. So we put that in place. So we just constantly remind them that they need to be a male allies. So what should they do? After the unconscious bias training, all the male CEO at abdomen, they need to go out there and join all the male association, raise their voice. They said that they promise that they're gonna be very consciously support the women in their network. And by doing the talk leadership, by doing the speaking, by spreading the attitude everywhere, but not just that. They make sure that when they go into the room, so women would be the one who be greeted first. So when they walk into the room, they need to look at the woman and say, hello, Titi, hello, Mai. They need to make that their own discipline. And they need to make themselves listen. If somebody in the room raise their voice, immediately they're gonna pay attention and say, again, what did you say? Can you just say that again? And they need to make sure that, if they are gathered as a group, and then normally men being men, they joke about women, they joke about sport, they joke about something that women never been part of. And then, we put it as a discipline that, if you are in a group that you have a woman, you need to pay attention into your joke. Make the woman feel included by saying something that they actually can contribute. So that's sort of an initiative and discipline that we launched in abdomen.
Yes, thank you so much.